This revenge story contains intense acts of retribution that may be excessive and could be disturbing to some viewers.
The apartment was a coffin of shadows, the dim light flickering over stained walls. I stood there, Nina's phone trembling in my grip, its screen a harsh glow slicing through the gloom. The air stank of stale takeout greasy cartons piled in the corner and something sour I couldn't name. Regret, maybe. My chest heaved, each breath jagged, as I scrolled through the messages. Tom, Ethan, Chris. 3 names. 3 strangers who'd carved up my life while I was blind, trusting her. Nina. The woman I'd loved with every damn piece of me. My stomach twisted, rage clawing up my throat, hot and bitter. I paced the worn carpet, its threads fraying under my boots. The place felt tighter now, walls pressing in like they wanted to crush me. The fridge hummed, a low, mocking drone background noise to the life we'd stitched together over years. I glanced at the photos tacked above the couch. Us at the beach, her laughing, me grinning like an idiot. Lies framed in cheap wood. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. I wanted to rip them down, smash the glass, watch those fake smiles shatter. She'd done this before. Little slips I'd let slide late nights, vague excuses. I'd swallowed my pride, convinced myself love meant forgiveness. But this was a schedule of betrayal. Monday with Tom, Tuesday with Ethan, Wednesday with Chris. Like I was just another chore on her list. My blood roared, a pulse pounding in my ears. I slammed the phone onto the counter. Glass crackers or the counter's eye, didn't care. The sound ricocheted, sharp and final. I stood there, breathing hard, fists tight. Revenge wasn't a thought yet, just a spark, flickering in the dark mess of my head. The door creaked open. Nina stepped in, heels clicking on the tile like gunfire. She froze, eyes darting to the phone, then back to me. Martin, what's wrong? Her voice was soft, laced with that fake concern she'd perfected. I didn't move, just stared. The woman I'd known, thought I'd known, was a ghost now. Martin, talk to me, she said, stepping closer. Her perfume hit me, sweet and cloying, twisting my gut. Tom, Ethan, Chris. I spat the names, low and sharp, each one a cut. You've been screwing 3 guys behind my back. I saw it all. Her face drained white. For a second she looked ready to lie, mouth parting. Then her shoulders sagged, a crack in the mask. Martin, I don't. My voice sliced through hers, cold as steel. Don't you dare. She reached out, fingers trembling. I stepped back. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears spilling, glistening in the half-light. Sorry's nothing. I turned away, my mind already spinning, dark plans taking root. You torched us, Nina, everything we had, and you're gonna pay. They all will. Her sobs echoed behind me, but I was done feeling. The spark flared into a flame. This wasn't the end, it was the start. The diner smelled like greasy fries and stale coffee, the kind of place where the air felt thick with routine. I slid into the booth across from James, the cracked vinyl groaning under me. He was already there, sipping black coffee, his sharp eyes catching mine over the mug's rim. Dishes clattered in the background, and a low buzz of chatter filled the room, but it all sounded muffled, like it was happening somewhere else. My head was still back in that apartment, stuck on those damn texts I'd found on Nina's phone. James set his mug down with a soft clink. You look like hell, Martin. She's screwing 3 guys, I said, cutting straight to it. Tom, Ethan, Chris, I don't even care who they are. I want her out of my life, and I want her broke. He raised an eyebrow, leaning back casually. Divorce is the play, file, push for a split of whatever's there. But cheating doesn't hit her wallet hard in this state. No-fault laws mean you're not getting revenge through the courts unless she's sitting on a pile of cash. I balled my fists under the table, the cold edge of the formica pressing into my skin. That's not enough. I need more than some half-assed legal fix. James took a slow sip, studying me. You've got more patience than I would. How'd you not see this coming? The question burned. I didn't answer, just stared at the table as the diner's lights buzzed overhead. A waitress laughed somewhere, the sound scraping at me. I leaned in, voice tight. I want her to pay, James, not just a divorce. I want her to feel it. He sighed, setting the mug down harder this time. The law's not a vengeance machine. You can drag her through court, maybe get half the savings, but it won't feel like what you're chasing. Not even close. My jaw clenched. So I just let her walk, after everything? James shrugged, his calm pissing me off. You could try for alimony, but she's not exactly loaded. The affairs might sway a judge's sympathy, but it's not a jackpot. Clean breaks your best shot. I slammed my hand on the table, the salt shaker jumping. A few people glanced over, but I didn't give a damn. Clean? You call this clean? She's been screwing around behind my back, and I'm supposed to just nod and move on? He didn't blink, just held my gaze like he'd heard this rant before. I'm telling you what the law can do. Anything beyond that's your call. That hit me hard. The diner's noise faded to a dull hum, the world narrowing to this shitty booth. He was right, the law wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't make her hurt like I was hurting. I leaned back, the seat creaking again. Then I'll handle it myself. James frowned, shifting forward. Martin, don't do something dumb. You're mad, I get it, but save it, I snapped. I don't need a babysitter. He rubbed his temple, exhaling. Just think it through. Whatever's in your head, it's not worth ruining yourself over. I almost laughed. Ruin myself? Nina had already taken care of that. Every lie, every secret she'd kept, it was all unraveling me, piece by piece. Sitting here, surrounded by the clink of silverware and the smell of burnt toast, I saw it clear as day. There was no going back. Not to her, not to who I'd been. I shoved my chair back, the legs screeching on the linoleum. Thanks for the coffee. James reached for his wallet, but I threw a crumpled tin on the table. I've got it. He nodded, his face tight. Take care, Martin. I didn't say anything, just turned and walked out, the bell jingling as the door swung shut behind me. The night air hit me, cold and sharp, the city sprawling out in a mess of lights. Nina's face flashed in my mind, her tears, her trembling voice. Part of me still felt her warmth, the way she'd laugh and lean into me. But that was dead now, drowned in the truth of what she'd done. I shoved my hands in my pockets, the chill sinking in. James's voice lingered, the law's not a vengeance machine, but it didn't matter. If the system wouldn't give me what I needed, I'd find another way. The bar was a dump, shoved into a forgotten alley where the city's pulse barely reached. Neon signs buzzed and flickered outside, half dead, while inside, the air hung heavy with cigarette smoke and the stale reek of cheap beer. Martin leaned against the bar counter, its surface tacky under his elbows, the drone of a busted jukebox grating on his nerves. Across from him, Mike sprawled in the booth, grinning like a predator who'd just scented blood. His knuckles were cracked, scabbed over from some brawl, and his broad shoulders stretched his leather jacket tight a walking billboard for the kind of brute force Martin couldn't muster alone. Revenge, huh? Mike's voice rasped like he'd smoked a pack already that day. He twirled his whiskey glass, ice rattling. You sure you've got the stomach for this, Marty? You're not exactly a tough guy. Martin's jaw tightened, Mike's jab stinging more than he'd let on. I don't have a choice. Nina's taken everything, my house, my pride. I want her and those sons of bitches to pay. Mike let out a rough laugh, leaning back. Okay, I'm listening. What's the play? You gonna write him a sad letter? Or actually do something? Cut the crap, Martin snapped, glaring. I hired a P.I. Pete. He's digging up dirt on Tom, Ethan, and Chris. Once I've got their locations, I need you to help me hit 'em where it hurts. Mike arched a brow, leaning forward now, interested. And what do I get out of this? I ain't your charity case. Ribeye steak, medium rare, my treat. Same as always. That got a deep, rumbling laugh out of Mike, loud enough to turn heads at the bar. You're on, but toss in a bottle of Jack, too. This sounds like it's gonna get ugly. Martin nodded, his heart kicking up a gear. The rush hit him hard, the thrill of the chase, the sense of finally taking the wheel. Ever since he'd seen those texts on Nina's phone, he'd been a ghost, floating through the wreckage of his old life. Now, something darker was waking up inside him. something that scared him just enough to notice. He swallowed it down, letting the surge of power drown it out. The bar door groaned open, and Pete slunk in, his trench coat a mess of wrinkles and stains. He dropped into the booth beside Mike and slapped a manila folder onto the table with a dull thud. "Here's your intel," he muttered, voice like gravel. "Addresses, jobs, daily habits. These guys ain't exactly in hiding." Martin grabbed the folder, flipping it open fast. Photos, spilled out grainy shots of Tom, Ethan, Chris along with scribbled notes and maps. His hand shook, not from fear but from the adrenaline pumping hot through his veins. "This is it. Everything I need." Mike peeked over, grinning wider. "Well, damn. Look at you, all fired up. Didn't think you had it in you." Martin didn't answer, eyes locked on the pages. Tom holed up in a crummy apartment across town. Ethan clocked hours at some flashy tech startup. Chris ran a greasy garage. Normal lives, begging to be torn apart. His mind spun with ideas ways to break them, slow and deliberate. It sent a chill through him, part dread, part exhilaration, too tangled to pull apart. Pete coughed, breaking the spell. "You sure about this, Martin? Once you go down this road, there's no turning back." The question hung there, heavy in the smoky haze. For a heartbeat, Martin hesitated. Was he really doing this? Stepping over that edge? Then Nina's smirk flashed in his mind, her voice dripping with contempt, and the doubt melted away. "Yeah, I'm sure." Mike slapped him on the back, nearly knocking him forward. "That's my boy. Let's make 'em wish they'd never met you." Martin gripped the folder tighter, nodding. Nina had cut him loose, left him drifting, but now he had a target, a purpose, and he wasn't stopping for anything. The warehouse stood like a hulking tomb under the bruised sky, its rusted metal doors groaning as the wind shoved against them. I stepped inside, the cold concrete floor biting through the soles of my boots like it wanted a taste of me. The air hung heavy, thick with cigarette smoke that coiled lazily around the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Two figures waited near a scarred wooden table, Jack and Liam. Their shadows stretched across the floor, long and jagged, like they'd already claimed the place as their own. Jack, the older of the pair, had a scar carving a wicked path down his cheek, twitching whenever he smirked. Liam lounged against a stack of splintered crates, arms crossed, his eyes glinting with a cold, predatory edge. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. This was it, the line I'd been towing for months, about to cross into something I couldn't unmake. I'd bent rules before, broken a few, but this was a plunge into the deep end, no lifelines. My hands shook, and I jammed them into my jacket pockets to keep it under wraps. "Martin, right?" Jack's voice scraped the air, rough as if he'd gargled gravel and chased it with whiskey. "Mike says you're here for a favor." I nodded, forcing my tone steady even as my gut churned. "I want Nina and those 3 bastards she's running with buried in debt, the kind that keeps him up at night clawing at nothing." Jack let out a low, rumbling chuckle that echoed off the walls. "Ain't the first time someone's crawled to us for revenge, but it don't come cheap." "I've got cash," I said, yanking an envelope from my coat. It hit the table with a soft thud. 20 grand, every dime I had left after Nina torched our marriage and took the rest. "That's it, all I've got." Liam snatched it up, flipping through the bills with a sneer that could curdle milk. "This'll get the ball rolling, sure, but we ain't charity cases. You want 'em ruined. It's gonna cost more than this sad little stack." My jaw tightened, teeth grinding. "I'll pay whatever it takes. Just make sure they feel it every goddamn second." Jack leaned in, his scar twitching like it had a pulse. "We can make people vanish if that's your speed. Quick, clean, done. Debt's slower, though. A real grinder. You sure that's the play?" I hesitated, his words sinking like stones in my chest. Vanishing them would be easy blink, and they're gone. But I didn't want easy. I wanted them to squirm, to watch their world crumble brick by brick. "Debt," I said, voice hard. "I want 'em to lose it all, piece by piece." Liam smirked, dragging a suitcase from under the table. He flipped the latches with a flick of his wrist, and the lid popped open to reveal neat stacks of cash, $500,000. crisp and untouched. My breath hitched. That kind of money could buy a whole lot of misery. "We'll loan it out," Jack said, his tone dripping with venom. "High interest, short fuse. They'll be choking on it by the end of the month, begging for air." I gave a sharp nod, heart slamming against my ribs. "And Nina?" Jack's eyes narrowed, pinning me like a bug under glass. "She's the prize, huh? We'll see she's drowning right alongside 'em. But you better be damn sure, Martin. Once this train leaves the station, ain't no brakes." I pictured Nina, her crocodile tears, that shaky voice she'd use to twist the knife deeper. A flicker of something soft stirred in me, but it was smothered fast under a landslide of rage and betrayal. "I'm sure," I said, my words ice cold. Liam snapped the suitcase shut, the sound cracking through the silence. "Deal's done then. We'll take it from here." I turned to go, boots scuffing the floor, but Jack's voice hooked me back. "One last thing, Martin. Don't go getting cold feet. You're in the game now, like it or not." I didn't glance back. The warehouse door slammed behind me, the clang bouncing off the hollow space like a gunshot. I just handed my soul over to the devil, and there was no clawing it back. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, sinking into my bones as I trudged to my car. The wheels were spinning now. Nina and her pack of snakes would soon be crushed under the weight of their own greed. A twisted smile crept across my lips, sharp and bitter. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was about to dish it out in spades. The warehouse hulked against the horizon, a decaying beast beneath a sky streaked with purple and gray. Its rusted doors groaned as the wind battered them, a low howl slipping through the cracks. Inside, the air hung, heavy cigarette smoke curling in lazy spirals, mingling with the sour reek of sweat and fear. Jack and Liam stood near a table pocked with scars, its surface catching the sickly glow of a flickering bulb overhead. A suitcase sat between them, its content stacks of crisp cash shimmering like a promise. Nina strode in, her heels striking the concrete with sharp, deliberate clicks, a rhythm that stopped dead when her eyes landed on me. "Martin, what the hell is this?" Her voice wavered, a crack in her usual bravado. She glanced at Jack and Liam, then back to me, her posture stiffening. I didn't answer. I just watched, my gaze steady, as Tom, Ethan, and Chris slunk in behind her. Their faces were a gallery of unease, Tom's twitchy eyes darting, Ethan's jaw tight with defiance, Chris smoothing his cheap suit like it could shield him. Mike loomed at my side, cracking his knuckles with a grin that split his face like a fault line. "Welcome to the party, boys," he said, his tone dripping with menace. Nina forced a laugh, thin and brittle. "This is a joke, right? You're not serious." I stepped forward, my boots thudding against the floor, the sound filling the silence. "Dead serious," I said, my voice low and sharp, cutting through her pretense. "You and your lovers are gonna pay for what you did." Tom piped up, his words tumbling out in a nervous rush. "Look, man, we didn't mean to—" "Shut up," I barked, my tone a whip crack. "You don't get to talk." Jack cleared his throat, the scar on his cheek twitching as he spoke. "Let's get to it. Martin here wants to settle some scores. You three want Nina? Fine. But it's gonna cost you." Liam flipped open the suitcase with a flourish, revealing the cash inside $500,000 in neat banded stacks. "You want her, you pay up," he said, his voice smooth as oil. Nina's eyes widened, a sly grin tugging at her lips. "Oh, I see. A little auction, huh? Well, boys, let's see who's got the deepest pockets." Tom fumbled in his jacket, pulling out a crumpled wad of bills. "I've got $50,000, he stammered, hands trembling. "That's all I've got." Ethan smirked, tossing a thicker stack onto the table. $55,000. I can do better than that." Chris straightened, playing the big shot despite the sweat beading on his brow. $60,000, he declared, sliding his money forward. "And I'll marry her, Martin. Just take the cash and go." I scooped up their offerings, the bills cool and heavy in my hands. 60 grand from Chris, 55 from Ethan, 50 from Toma Decent Hall. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Nina clapped her hands, her laughter ringing out like she was hosting a game show. "Come on, boys, you can do better than that. Martin's not serious about leaving me. He never is. Something snapped inside me. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm and shoving her back. She stumbled, her heels skittering on the concrete, her eyes flashing with shock. "Martin, please." "Save it," I snarled, releasing her and turning to Jack. "Loan her $150,000. Let her figure it out." Jack smirked, pulling a crumpled contract from his pocket and scribbling the terms. He slid it across the table to Nina. "Sign here, sweetheart." She stared at it, her hands hovering. "I can't pay that back. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money?" I shrugged, my heart a block of ice. "Not my problem. You made this bed." Her protest faded into a whimper as I shifted my attention to her trio of suitors. "Cash isn't enough," I said, nodding to Mike. "Rough them up." Mike didn't hesitate. He waded in like a storm, slamming Tom against the wall with a thud that split his lip, blood trickling down his chin. Ethan swung a wild punch, but Mike caught his arm and drove a fist into his jaw, sending him sprawling. Chris bolted for the door, panic in his eyes. But Mike snagged his collar and yanked him back, smashing his nose with a sickening crunch. Blood spattered the concrete, pooling in dark, wet stains as I stood there, arms crossed, watching my rage take shape in their broken bodies. Jack stepped forward, his voice calm amid the chaos. "We'll take it from here. They owe us now, Nina, too. We've got plans for them." I met his gaze, my own voice hollow. "Good. Make it hurt." Mike dusted off his hands, and we turned for the exit. The warehouse door clanged shut behind us, a final punctuation mark. The night air hit my face, crisp and biting, cutting through the haze of adrenaline. But it couldn't touch the emptiness clawing at my chest to void, that had opened wider with every blow, every dollar, every tear. I'd won, hadn't I? The revenge I'd dreamed of, plotted in the sleepless nights after Nina's betrayal, had unfolded exactly as I'd envisioned. So why did it taste like ash? Her sobs lingered in my ears, unbidden, her tear-streaked face flickering in my mind like a ghost. A pang of guilt tried to surface, sharp and insistent, but I crushed it down, smothering it beneath the weight of my anger. She'd chosen this. They all had. The cash in my pocket, the blood on the floor, it was justice, cold and final. We climbed into the truck, the engine rumbling to life as Mike lit a cigarette, the glow casting shadows across his grin. The city lights streaked past in a blur as we drove, neon signs and street lamps bleeding into one another. I stared out the window, my reflection a faint smear against the glass. Something gnawed at me, a quiet ache I couldn't name. Victory was mine, but at what cost? I torched every bridge, severed every tie, and now the road ahead stretched empty and endless. Nina's voice echoed again, softer this time, "Martin, please," and for a moment, I wondered if I'd lost more than I'd gained. But the thought dissolved as quickly as it came, swallowed by the hum of the tires and the dark sprawl of the night. The wheels were in motion, and there was no turning back. The bar's flickering light buzzed faintly, throwing jagged shadows across the grimy floor. Martin leaned heavily against the counter, the whiskey scorching his throat as he downed another shot. The air hung heavy with the stench of stale beer and sweat, the murmur of voices doing little to ease the tension cold around him. Beside him, Mike cradled a beer, his knuckles still bloody and swollen from the warehouse fight. They'd done it. Nina and her lovers were finished, their world in ruins. Yet the triumph sat like lead in Martin's gut, heavy and cold. The door crashed open, the sound slicing through the room like a blade. 3 hooded figures barged in, Tom, Ethan, and Chris, their eyes blazing with fury. Martin recognized them instantly, his pulse spiking. Tom's voice was a guttural growl. "You destroyed us, you bastard!" Adrenaline flooded Martin's veins, jolting him upright. His stool hit the floor with a bang as he braced himself. Mike was already standing, fists ready, a savage grin splitting his face. "Guess you punks need another round." Tom swung a bat, the air hissing as it arced toward Martin's head. He ducked, the wood skimming his arm, pain exploding in a hot burst. Roaring, he tackled Tom, driving him down, fists hammering into the man's ribs with a rage that felt endless. Mike seized Ethan, smashing him into a table glass bottle shattered, spraying shards and foam. Chris froze for a split second, but Mike pounced, a vicious hook dropping him to the floor. The bar dissolved into pandemonium. Patrons bolted for the doors as the fight sprawled across the room, tables toppling, chairs splintering. Martin's focus shrank to the rhythm of his punches, the burn of his lungs, the blood on his tongue. He kept swinging until Tom lay still, face battered and swollen. Mike towered over Ethan and Chris, both sprawled and moaning, their defiance snuffed out. Sirens screamed faintly outside, closing in fast. Martin hauled himself up, chest heaving, every inch of him aching. Mike slapped his shoulder, grinning fiercely. "We nailed 'em, Marty. They're done for good." Martin nodded, but the words echoed hollowly. The cops were coming, sure, but the bar's security cam would show self-defense clean, airtight. He'd walk free again, just like before. Yet as he surveyed the wreckage, broken glass, overturned furniture, the bitter edge of victory soured into something bleak. Nina's face flickered in his mind. Her tears, her pleas, and a sharp pang of doubt stabbed through him. Had he lost more than he'd won? The sirens swelled, drowning the thought. The city's pulse thrummed on, indifferent, and Martin stood amidst the chaos, the weight of his choices settling deep. There was no turning back now.